Hi again, everyone. Just want to welcome you once again to Wearables 101, hosted by Wearable Tech Ventures and moderated by our founder, Lakeisha Greenwade. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's going to be an exciting webinar. We should officially start in just a few minutes, and the webinar will be recorded, so just bear that in mind, and we will definitely have the recording available to all registered attendees in the next 72 hours or so. So if you didn't register, if you joined by word of mouth or somebody told you about this great session, just go ahead onto the website and register so that you can get a copy of the webinar afterwards. And thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Okay, everyone, we're about to start. I'd like to introduce the founder of Wearable Tech Ventures, Lakeisha Greenwade.
Good morning to the West Coast, good afternoon to the East Coast, and everything in between. Thank you so much for joining us today for our first workshop in our wearable series, Wearable Tech 101. What is wearable tech and why does it matter? I am incredibly honored to have you here today, and I'm excited for you to hear from one of the industry experts, Pankaj Kedia. But before we get there, I'd like to introduce Wearable Tech Ventures to you. Who are we? What are we doing? And where are we going? Well, we are the global ecosystem for wearable technology, and you can learn more about us daily if you go to wearabletechventures.org. Basically, we were founded more than a few years ago, probably around the same time that you'll hear shortly from Pankaj when he started the global wearables business at Qualcomm Technologies. And it started as a result of responding to violence in the city of Baltimore. And at the time, I was just exploring what could fashion tech and what could wearable technology become from a small business and a startup perspective. Ultimately, we have grown into a 501c3 organization where we develop and promote wearables, and where we're also supporting 100 wearable startups led by underrepresented founders by 2030. So ultimately, what we're doing is we are shifting the entire tech industry, and we're serving as the model as to what should tech look like. And this is important because wearables is one of the fastest growing segments of tech. And we are modeling what representation, what diversity should look like, and also what solutions we can solve when we bring everybody to the table to share their ideas and ultimately innovate. As a result, we are developing a new generation of innovators, inventors, and investors. But before we go too deep, we're going to launch a poll because it could be assumed that you know what wearables or wearable technology is. And so, because this is Wearable Tech 101, we're going to ask you a few questions to get started and to get engaged. And so what I'm going to do, it might be a little bit easier if I stop sharing my screen. Aaliyah, we're going to launch our poll. And so what we want to know is, do you know what wearable tech is? Also, do you own a wearable? And if so, are you currently wearing that wearable? So if you can, go ahead and answer that particular poll. We just want to gauge where you are. Do you know what wearable tech is? Do you own a wearable? And are you wearing it right now? And it seems like most of you here do have a wearable or you own one, and some of you don't, and that's okay. But we can tell you that, our goal is to make sure that every single person has a wearable in the near future. So this is great to know. Most of you know what wearable tech is. About almost 50-50, 55% of you own a wearable, 45% say no, and about 3 of you are wearing your wearable right now. That's great. Aaliyah, we could go ahead and end that poll. Thank you so much. You can share those results if you want. And I'll get back into Wearable Tech Ventures. Perfect. Great. So it's good to know, not, for those that are in attendance right now, but of course, those that may be viewing this recorded workshop at a future date, you could go ahead and write down your answers and gauge how your knowledge of wearable tech evolves throughout our workshop series as you watch these in preparation for other programming that we host throughout the year. Now, why are we doing this particular session? Well, again, we are developing a new generation of innovators, inventors, and investors. And in addition to the workshop series that we are hosting this May through August, we also have three virtual camps being conducted throughout the state of Maryland and the world. Two of those camps are private, but there is one that is made public, and you can register your middle school or high school student today. If you go on wearabletechventures.org, you can find the information about that particular camp that will be held July 12th through the 16th. Ultimately, this particular time is set aside to provide education, awareness, and access to wearable tech thought leaders in preparation for the world's largest and most inclusive wearable tech hackathon, which is hosted by Wearable Tech Ventures September 24th through the 26th. There is no cost to participate, and we hope that you will feel comfortable to engage in that particular activity, whether you are a tech expert or a novice. There is a seat at the table for you. And I know you will feel more comfortable the more you attend these particular workshops, the more you replay them and engage with us. We want to make sure that you're there in attendance with us. So now let's get to the man of the hour. I am incredibly honored to introduce our speaker for today, Pankaj Kedia, and I'm going to stop sharing so that he can load his slides as I introduce him. Pankaj Kedia is the founder, business lead, and senior director of the wearables segment at Qualcomm Technologies. He incubated the business over 6 years ago and continues to lead its growth, having shipped 250 plus products across 50 plus countries during this time. That's a lot of impact. Pankaj also leads the shareables audio business for the company in collaboration with global audio brands. Prior to Qualcomm, Pankaj held a series of strategy, product, business development, customer, and marketing roles at Intel over 15 years. Under his leadership, Intel launched a series of laptops, tablets, handhelds, and smartphones, bringing growth beyond the PC at the company. Pankaj is an active investor in the tech space, advisor to startups and nonprofit companies, hopefully soon to be an advisor with Wearable Tech Ventures, and he served on multiple boards. He is an avid TED follower and has spoken at multiple industry events about the impact of mobile, wireless, and wearable technologies around the world. Pankaj holds an MBA from Wharton and Master of Science from the University of Michigan and a Bachelor of Science from the Indian Institute of Technology. Without further ado, please welcome in our virtual environment our speaker of the hour and our expert in wearables, Pankaj Kedia. Pankaj, we'll turn it over to you and let us know if we can assist in any way as you begin.
Excellent. Thank you, Lakisha. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening. Lakisha, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Excellent. So I'm going to spend maybe the next 35 or 40 minutes describing what is wearable tech, why each one of us should care. I'll talk about how the industry has evolved, what our vision is for wearables. Wearables come in different shapes and sizes. So how should we think about the world of wearables? What matters and what we expect will happen over the next 5 or 10 years. So let's start with how the industry has evolved. You know, I've been in the industry for almost 30 years. And long time ago, the PC came about, the desktop PC came about. This is how we accessed the internet. When you were accessing the internet on the desktop, you went to your desktop, you went to your desk, you went to your office. In the 90s, that changed. We went from the desktop PC to the laptop PC. The first laptops were not really mobile, they were portable. This is one of the first laptops that had come out. I still have it. It was about 2 inches thick, and the battery life was less than an hour. But what laptops allowed you to do was take the internet where you were, where you wanted to go. So you could take the internet to a flight, on a train, to a Starbucks, to wherever you wanted to work. Over time, the laptops have evolved. Now we have 10 or 20-hour battery. Now they are thin and light. They are as thin as your notebook. So they have become much more portable. But then we saw, starting with the iPhone, Android, all kinds of tablets, we entered the mobile era. For the last 12, 14 years, we have come to rely on the smartphone or the iPad. We take our smartphone wherever we go. This is the device I use to access the internet, to get directions, to manage my finances, to listen to music, to read books. This is the device that has led to companies like Uber and other sharing economy companies. And now we are in the cloud era. We are in the wearable era. Instead of having apps on your PC or phone, the apps are moving to the cloud. And wearables is one of the ways you connect to the cloud. There are other ways, like your TV is becoming smarter, your speaker is getting smarter. Many devices around you are getting smarter. And you're able to connect to the services in the cloud. If you think about every successive generation, the successive generation has been 10 times bigger than the previous generation. The successive generation has happened much faster than the previous generation. And while the first wearables came out 5 or 6 years ago, we are still very much in the first inning. Another way to look at this is, I think we are here. First 2 or 3 years, there was a hype cycle. Everybody was jumping in. Everybody was investing. Then we went through consolidation, where the weak died and the strong became stronger. The strong companies doubled down. And now we are really in early stages of sustained growth. I don't see this growth slowing anytime soon, certainly not over the next 5 or 10 years. So it's a very exciting space. So what is this space? When you say wearable, what should go through your mind? I'll talk more about this, but a simple way to think about it is there are devices you wear on the wrist, smartwatches. The Apple Watch is an example. The Samsung Watch is an example. The Louis Vuitton smartwatch is an example. Many brands in the style category, luxury, sports are investing. The second category is you can think of smart trackers, wearable trackers. Fitbit trackers, for example, trackers for your pets, trackers for your parents and grandparents. And last is, I call it smart everything. Wouldn't it make sense to count steps with the right smart in your shoe instead of counting steps with your tracker? Wouldn't it make sense that every glass becomes a smart glass? Wouldn't it make sense that every piece of jewelry not just looks beautiful, but also is maybe functional? So these are maybe 3 buckets to think about. Smartwatches get the most attention. They are here. Smart trackers are not far behind. And to make everything smart, your clothing, your shoes, your jewelry, it's a 5 or 10-year process. And we are just getting started. Another way to think about wearable is the coming together of fashion and technology. So in a sense, everything you and I wear is, quote, a wearable. My shoe is a wearable, my shirt is a wearable, but they don't have modern technology. Wearable is the convergence of what you know and love, the right brand, the right design, the right style, the right shoe, with the latest technology, internet-based, cloud-based, different applications, the right performance. So that's another way to think about wearable. Now, the smartwatch segment is the furthest ahead, and I'm just showing the growth in that segment. It's up and to the right. If you look at some of the recent data, despite COVID last year, the market grew 28%. That's a very high number, even for the tech space. Yesterday, big behemoths, Google and Samsung, announced they are working together. Google acquired Fitbit for $1 billion+. So big moves are happening in the industry. Earlier this year, Apple shipped 100 million units. Anything that you ship in 100 million quantities is big. And then we are expecting similar kind of growth in the tracker space. So any way you look at it, Lakisha talked about investors, innovators. This is big opportunity for all of us. When a market is growing, it normally segments. The wearable space is no different. If I look at the smartwatch space, the Pebble was maybe the first smartwatch that most of us bought and wore. That was only 6 or 7 years ago. Last couple of years, the market started segmenting. You can buy a smartwatch for adults, for kids, for seniors. And as we speak, it is literally hyper segmenting right now. You can buy a smartwatch from a Tag Heuer or Louis Vuitton, a fashion brand like Michael Kors or Fossil, a sports brand like Polar and Sunto. Many of the phone companies, the big ones, Apple, Samsung, Oppo, Vivo, Xiaomi, these are top 5 phone companies. Every one of them is playing. There is a lot of action around smartwatches for children. Over the last year, we have seen accelerated activity around smartwatches for seniors. Helps them stay connected to their doctors, their nurses, their children. Helps them stay healthy, get well. Helps them run errands. So really, the possibilities are endless. So we are in the cloud era, we are in the wearables era. This is a high growth space, and there's a lot of action. What is our vision? When we talk about wearables, we think head to toe. We think a smart helmet. So when you're driving, the helmet can tell you if you had maybe a little too much to drink. A smart glass brings AR capability. So when you're in a museum, you know the story behind the story. A wristband, a medical band, a smartwatch, things for your wrist to stay connected, to monitor your health. A smart shoe, of course, clothing. We expect each one of these to be always connected. Today, all of you have a smartphone. I have many smartphones. When you put your smartphone in the airplane mode, when you're not connected, it's not very useful. The same thing will happen to every one of these devices. They will be always connected. There's a lot of discussion around 4G going to 5G. Over the next 5 years, you will see 5G coming to many devices. They'll become intuitive. They'll become natural. When you wear a shoe today, when you wear a sneaker today, there is actually a lot of technology that Nike and Adidas and Puma have put in it. You don't think about what technology is inside. You wear one shoe for basketball, another for running, another for walking. It's intuitive, it's natural. I think the same thing will happen with every one of these devices. You will have multiple devices on you. They'll talk to each other. It makes more sense to count steps in your shoe. It actually makes more sense to take your heart rate in your ear. This gives you the most accurate heart rate. So it might be that you'll use your smartwatch to see what your heart rate is, but it's being measured in your ear. And you'll use your watch to see how many steps, but the steps are being counted in your shoe. You know, the wearable device, this smartwatch knows who I am. It knows where I am. It knows my heart rate. It knows who my friends are. It knows what my calendar looks like. With AI, with ML, that data is very powerful. And you will increasingly see this becoming proactive. It will predict what you will do based on what you have done. It will be your personal assistant. And gone are the days when wearables is only for some of us. Wearables are increasingly for all of us. I will show you some examples. If you are a runner, a good wearable can show you the routing, track your run, and share it with your friends and family. If there is an urgent message, it will tell you about it. If you are a sports addict, if you're into swimming, if you're into Pilates, if you are into 100 or so sports. When I started this journey, I did not know 100 sports existed. But in working with Sunto, believe it or not, there are more than 100 sports around the world. Your wearable will make it seamless to participate in every one of them. I am calling in today from San Diego. San Diego is a surfer town. If you're a surfer and you want to track the tide, you want to adjust your surfing accordingly, there is a wearable for that. If you're into music, there is a wearable for that. Headsets or earbuds to take your calls while on the run. If you have children, you want to know where they are. You want to know if your 7-year-old is running late coming back from school. There is a wearable for that. If you have parents and grandparents who want to stay healthy, get the right medical attention, stay in touch with their doctors and nurses, stay in touch with you, there's a wearable for that. If you're into fashion, if you're the trendsetter, if you're going to a party and you want your shoes to match your dress, or you want the color of your handbag to match your dress, It's possible. It's happening. If you are a fast driver and you want to know what's coming around the corner, there is a wearable for that, the right AR glass. If you're into travel, if you travel a lot, if jet lag bugs you every time, if you fly from here to London and don't want to worry about simple things like um, knowing what the weather is in London, um, as soon as you land, which train to take, there are wearables for that. If you're a fashionista, there is a wearable for that. If you're into luxury, there is a stunning Louis Vuitton smartwatch. I like this so much that I have many models of this one. If you're into jewelry, there is a wearable for that. Maybe you want to have a SOS button if you live in areas that are not safe. In times of COVID, maybe you want to keep safe distance. That's the technology behind these wearables. If you have a pet in the US, sometimes we care more about our pets than our children. You want your pet to be healthy. You don't want to lose your pet. So there are many options in the industry. I'm lucky to be working at Qualcomm and working with all of these brands and many more. So we are in the wearable era. It is growing fast. Wearables are head to toe. Wearables are smartwatches, smart trackers, smart clothing, smart everything. There is a wearable for you. What is a good wearable? It does these 5 things well. Number one, most people are using a smartphone today. And on a smartphone, when you try to open an app, it's very instantaneous. When you go from one screen to the next, it's buttery. You want the same performance in your wearable. If you don't get the same performance, you get frustrated, you stop wearing. You want equally good music. You want equally good security. You want equally good graphics. So performance, very important. Number 2, it should be seamlessly connected. As consumers, you should not care how it is connected. It should be connected in the background. You shouldn't have to worry about battery life. We have gotten used to charging our smartphones every day. It used to be every week. For a watch, it used to be every few years you change the battery. or if it is a mechanical watch, you would never change the battery. Today, we are getting used to charging our smartwatches every day. We want to change that and go to at least charging every week. Because the wearable is on you, it's a very important device for sensors. And there's a lot of innovation happening in the sensor space. Sensors for running and sports and so on. Sensors on the medical side for ECG, blood pressure. Sensors for haptics. So with your movement, you can do different things. Bringing sensors to apparel, to clothing, is still a few years away. How do you take the sensor technology and embed it in the thread of your shirt? And then finally, size. If you're going to wear something, it needs to look good. It needs to be fashionable. It needs to be sleek. If you're going to wear something, it needs to look good. It needs to be fashionable. It needs to be sleek. If you're going to wear a ring, same thing. So I talked about many, many different types of wearables for every one of us and your family and your pets. No matter which wearable, these 5 things matter. Size is different for different wearables, but focus on size matters. Different wearables have different sensor technology, but focus on sensors matter. So for the hackathon that Lakisha is describing, we would welcome innovation in each one of these areas. Let me close with where we are headed next. First, every wearable will get cellular technology. They'll be always connected. You don't have to carry your phone with you. They will be always connected. Similar technology is coming to your shirt, your trousers, your shoes. We started thinking about wearables for 4-year-olds and wearables for 100-year-olds and everyone in between. This phenomena started in China with one-child policy. And in China, in the US, we are spoiled. We drop our children to school. In China, you have one child, 6 years old. She walks to school. So and normally the parents go to a big city to work. The 6-year-old is staying with her grandparents. So the grandparents want to know where she is. This is only 3 or 4 years ago. This is coming to every place around the world. In the US, there are wearables for children at Verizon, at AT&T, at T-Mobile. And many new brands are jumping in. So we talked about the hackathon for teens and tweens and so on. This is new opportunity for us to pursue. On the other end of the spectrum, in the US, in Western Europe, in Japan, the average age is very high because the senior population is very high. There are opportunities. We think wearable will be of great importance here. And then many, many other devices we talked about. So I work at Qualcomm. Qualcomm is a phone company, an IoT company, a wearable company. If you have a smartphone, if you have a wearable, it's likely based on Qualcomm. What we make at Qualcomm are the brains inside your products. But actually what we make possible are all the experiences for 4-year-olds to 100-year-olds. I'll end with my personal goal. We started the wearable segment 5 or 6 years ago. The industry has gone from 0 to 100, 125 million over the last year. That's per year sales. There are 7 billion people around the world. There is no reason why every man, every woman, every child, every pet should not have a wearable by the end of the decade. So we have a 10-year marathon. We need to go from 100, 125 million a year to a billion a year and have the full installed base covering all of the population. So the question to ponder is, given what you do, given what your interest is, how can you help advance this industry, advance this ecosystem? Let me pause here. I'll throw it back to Lakisha. We have a few minutes for Q&A and discussion.
Pankaj, this is absolutely wonderful. And I think that from our interactions up until this point, it's safe to say that you and I are the two leading global advocates for wearable technology from the standpoint of developing and ensuring that every man, woman, child, and pet has a wearable in their possession, but also providing diverse perspectives to come to the table and to continue to drive innovation so that wearables can impact our daily lives in a positive way. Thank you so much for this amazing presentation. Now we've got a number of questions in the chat box, and I'm going to ask Aaliyah to look through some of those questions and present those so that we can get those answered. But while she's looking for that, for those that may have joined in a little bit late, I do want to remind you that you can find out more about what it is that we're doing with these workshops and how they ultimately lead to the Wearables Hackathon this year, which is going to be September 24th through the 26th. And then after that, to our Global Wearable Summit and other innovations. We are thrilled to continue to coach and invest in wearable founders, those that are emerging, those that are existing and thriving, as well as to continue to educate novices and experts in this particular space, because there is a lot of opportunity And we're going to make sure that we are developing with purpose, which I think will help to move the trajectory forward. So, Leah, how are we doing with questions in the chat?
Thanks so much, Lakeisha, and thanks, Pankaj, for a fantastic presentation. The first question, which I think we all can understand, is seeing that you want to have this wearables for everyone, how do you counter concerns around personal data safety? And she says, for example, if people don't think the benefits of convenience outweigh the perceived risk in solving real life problems, how do you counter that?
Yeah. Alia, it's always the cost benefit equation. You know, today there are 7 billion people, 5 billion have a phone. When you pick up your phone and call someone, there is risk around somebody tapping in, somebody hacking. You don't think about it. You still make that phone call because the benefit the call brings to you is much greater than the risk. There are 2 billion people on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. There is a risk, but the benefit of me connecting with my family and friends is much greater. I think the same thing applies here. As more and more wearables come to the market, to the industry, first, based on the latest technology, the risk continues to go lower. It is not zero, continues to go lower. But then people would use them because the benefit outweighs the cost. So Alia, it's a concern. We are working on it. It will get better over time, but we don't see it as a reason to slow down the adoption.
Thanks so much. I think that was a great answer. Lakeisha, do you want to chime in with anything?
Great point. As far as the concerns with data, that is also an area of opportunity that we will be exploring in the hackathon. And we will also have some additional mini workshops featured with some organizations that focus on data safety as well as with legislation. So please make sure you register to engage and share your thoughts and ideas around that there.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so on to the next question. We had two similar questions. I'm just going to consolidate those two, and they are related to the medical space for wearables in terms of reliability of patient data, FDA regulations, and the questions are related to what do you think has to happen in the space of wearables in order for medical providers to accept personal health data as equal to the level of traditionally collected information through medical grade tools, for example?
Yeah, that's a good question, Alia. The regulations vary in different parts of the world. But in general, when you talk about medical grade, the industries are highly regulated. In the US, you have to go through FDA and so on to get products approved. Two things will happen. Number one, increasingly in the medical space, we are moving towards personal care, individual care. So instead of you going to the hospital or the doctor is coming to you. It's more personal. It's more one-on-one. There's a lot of discussion around telemedicine. And so with that trend, you cannot have, big $1 million equipment with you at home. You're relying more on the latest smartphone or wearable technology on you. So the equipment will become mobile and wearable. Number one. Number two, as that happens, the regulations, how FDA manages it, will need to evolve. It will take time, but it will happen. And good products, successful products would need to adhere to that. So it brings a new layer of complexity, but it's gravity. It has to happen because the benefit of having the doctor come to you and give you personalized medicine is much greater than the cost you have to incur to pass through different regulations.
Thank you so much. Lakeisha?
Just one point to add, high-fiving Pankaj with everything that you said. Wearable Tech Ventures has also been in communication and in partnership with a number of medical associations and physician represented associations. And one of the things that we're going to continue to do is to drive that conversation about how new wearable technologies can help eliminate bias as it relates to that clinical and medical setting. And what we know is that there have been a number of wearables, or a few wearables, I should say, that have been developed in some of the premier institutions here in the US that did not have representative data or representative testing with patients. And because our organization represents what diversity should look like in tech, we are definitely going to continue that conversation and hopefully partner to make sure that future data is representative and that will help drive those decisions as they go to those authority figures such as FDA, et cetera.
Wonderful. Okay, I think this is a great question to perhaps tie up the session on. And I'm going to pose it to Pankaj, and then of course, Lakeisha, I already know you're going to have a response for this one too. It's what would your recommendation in terms of teaching elementary kids, and I'm assuming even younger, about the wearable field, giving them hands-on opportunities that wouldn't be very expensive. And this is perfect because it ties into our summer camps and everything we're trying to do. So Pankaj first, and then Lakeisha, I know you're going to hit it all out the ballpark as well.
Yeah. So Alia, teenagers today are very different from teenagers 10 years ago, 20 years ago, right? They are makers. They are hackers. They want to build stuff. They want to rebel against big corporations and big companies and so on. It actually starts, I'm not an expert in this, but it starts early, 4, 5, 6 years old, that thinking. Just like the internet has made it possible for every one of us to build a website. Just like the smartphone has made it possible for every one of us to build an app for an iPhone or Android. I think about it the same way when it comes to wearables. The technology, the price point, the access, the resources are there for every one of us, including teens, and 6-year-olds to start building the right wearable hardware and software. And I know this is one of the goals we have with Wearable Tech Ventures. So I'll let Lakisha add to it.
Pankaj, again, another virtual high five. I know around the world there are children as young as 3 that are being exposed to the language Python. And there's an incredible opportunity for us to build that pipeline of future innovators within the wearable tech segment. So, what we're currently doing is we are working with middle and high school students throughout the country. We've even had a number of invitations from South Africa and Europe to work with youth there. But again, the focus for this year, we have 2 camps that are focused on underrepresented youth in Maryland. And then we do have another learning opportunity for middle and high school students, which is going to be held July 12th through the 16th. And that's virtual and that's open to any student around the world, as long as they can accommodate the times where we will be gathered. And during those learning opportunities, we're going to be focused on wearable tech, the brain, and other innovations that incorporate those 2 elements. And we'll also touch on gaming and music. And so, with these innovators that we are developing, they will ultimately become certified as a wearable tech youth ambassador and or wearable tech college ambassador. And what that means is they will serve as our representatives and leaders, not only at our hackathon, but for other learning opportunities. And it's a huge opportunity to engage them with younger audiences and to help us develop those opportunities for the elementary and even preschool kids. And we know that we have to make sure that not only do we have our experts and enthusiasts that are at the corporate level and at the business level, but also making sure that our ambassadors are in place, because not only have teenagers changed, but children are changed. The pandemic has proven that, because children are coming out of the womb and having access to devices. Whereas a few years ago, they weren't introduced to perhaps an iPad until they were 2. And so that transition is something that we are definitely paying attention to. And we're going to be working with our entire gamut of innovators to make sure that we address that so that we can also identify how are people learning, how are they engaging, how are they using things, and making sure that we are developing useful products, ultimately going from the womb to the tomb. So if you have some suggestions and if you want to work with us, if you would like us to develop an educational opportunity, please make sure you contact us at wearabletechventures.org.
Okay, thank you so much. Do we have time for one more question, Lakisha, or do you want to leave it there? Okay, great. All right. So, and I think I'll broaden this one. The question is, from a cost-effective view, do you think digital wearables will reduce health costs and hopefully improve health outcomes once a proper product is placed with a patient? But I guess we can broaden that to ask about wearables in general and what benefit they will have in lowering other costs outside of health costs.
Yeah, Alia, short answer, yes. Longer answer, in the health space, it's widely known that preemptive care is more cost effective than emergency care. And there have been a lot of stories written around how wearables can give you early indication on COVID, for example. You can apply that thinking to different segments. I'll use AR as an example. Again, if you are driving a motorcycle or scooter, and if the AR can make it easier for you from a visibility standpoint, or what's around the corner. And if it can lower one tragedy, um, the cost is priceless. So we can go through different type of wearable, different type of use case, and the benefits clearly outweigh the cost. And last point, you have to look at both sides of the equation. Wearables bring down your cost, but also increase your benefit. And so it's the total benefit of owning the product that we should think about.
That was a wonderful answer. And thank you so much for helping us to close out this session, Pankaj. And so I do want to thank all of our participants for joining us today. This is not the end. We are just getting started. And you will be able to engage with Pankaj hopefully in future workshops and especially at the hackathon. We ask that you make sure that you share this information. If you found it valuable, share our flyers on social media, as well as continue to contact us and encourage your peers to register for our next workshop. We look forward to seeing you again in this space on Wednesday, June the 23rd, when we have our other roundtable partners, or excuse me, Wearable Roundtable partners. Lauren Hamlin from Under Armour and her team will be joining us then. So to be respectful of your time, we are going to conclude at this particular time. Thank you so much for joining us. And please make sure you connect with us, follow us on social media, as well as connect with Pankaj. And we look forward to seeing you in the near future.
Thank you, everyone.